Thank you for tuning in to In the Vine Dating Podcast. Today, we'll be continuing our newest segment called Who's in the Vine, released every Monday, where Melissa will be interviewing different guests to talk about the questions you ask. And remember to follow up every Thursday, where we will further discuss any questions or responses you may have. Please enjoy, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Who's in the Vine Monday. I am hyped to have Yesi here with me today. If anybody knows us, you know that. I'm already laughing.
I can't look at you.
You know that Yesi and I can have a good time anywhere, anytime, and it's more likely inappropriate.
Yeah, inappropriate timing for sure.
But I remember when we were becoming friends. Remember we were in your car, and I was like, "Dude, like you're actually funny."
You hit me, and you're like, "You're actually funny," and I was like, "I know. I never said I wasn't." Yeah.
But it takes a lot. It takes a lot for me to declare somebody to be funny, and that's when you won my heart.
Yeah, because it was hard to get there.
Yeah. Referred to 2 episodes ago for that story. So Yesi and I definitely have a huge history, and it's been so amazing to be able to live this life with her.
Right? Over 9 years in the making.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Don't even say that out loud. Now I feel like I gotta find a new one.
Wow. You did though at the mixer. You found one. Remember?
I did. I remember Yesi revealed the news to me that she had an ex-best friend, and I was like, "Does this mean you're gonna replace me?"
Yeah. And then one time I mentioned I went to go with a friend, and you're like, "Was it your ex-best friend?" And it was.
I've been through a lot.
I had to hide it.
The Lord reveals all.
I wasn't replacing you though.
That's right.
I can't.
And now here I am. Oh, that's right. Okay. So Yesi, what I find, I've been learning so much about you, honestly, throughout this podcast because obviously we talked about your parents' divorce before. Obviously we talked about your parents' divorce before, but to hear from the different perspectives that you've been speaking about it throughout the podcast has been like such a huge eye opener for me. Just because I've never realized that it brought, and I don't really want to say baggage, but it just brought like its own challenges, right? In relationships and in everything. And I'm sure that transpired not just in romantic relationships, but also friendships, like whatever that case may be, right? Mm-hmm. So before we dive into that though, do you want to share anything about yourself that our listeners don't know? Like what are your hobbies? What do you like to do? Take long walks? What?
Long walks on the beach. I am right now. My hobbies have been I like to do lots of arts and crafts. Mm-hmm. So I like home decor. I love to go thrifting. I love to go find good sales. Yes. And then I love to brag about them. Like, guess how much this cost me?
Yep.
Yeah. And I love doing that. Right now I'm working on a cool project, and I can't wait to share once it's complete. Yeah. But that's been taking up a lot of my husband and my time. Yes, a lot. And I'm a mom, so I love to learn new things on how I can be a better mom, and what foods to make for my baby and what to teach her. So that's a lot of fun. Honestly, I've been having the best time doing that. And then obviously I used to actually. Okay. Love to go off-roading.
Oh yeah.
And I say used to. Why are you laughing?
The story.
Oh yeah,
I'm not gonna say it.
Yeah, don't say it. It's so embarrassing. But I used to go off-roading a lot, actually, since I was 3. And since I've been married, like, I haven't been able to go camping all the time with them. So my family, so it's a little more difficult just because our schedules have been delaying with that. But I did that. And
do you think you'll let Zariah off-road at 3?
At 3, I don't know. I would definitely like to give her own motorcycle, and I have a feeling her grandpa, my dad, already has things lined up for her. I'm sure. I'm certain about that. But I'm just excited for her. I know she's gonna like it a lot. Yeah. And then I love doing makeup. I love doing hair, mostly makeup. I love to get the lashes on, do the whole look. glitter,
Love
glitter on
You, yes.
everything. Glitter queen.
I keep thinking like all these memories, like Ashley's wedding, like all of a sudden her bridesmaid dress, like glitter everywhere,
glitter all over my chest. I even took some for her. Remember?
Yeah, she loved it. Yeah, it was great, but it was just
I
so
put it
funny.
all over her. Yeah. Even my wedding, I put glitter all over my chest, on my face.
Yes, and just so you guys know, she is a makeup artist.
Yes.
And she now she's a retired hairstylist, and I'm not happy about that. None of us are. I feel like the last time she cut my hair, I felt like I was doing like the Underground Railroad, where it's like I couldn't tell anybody that she did it.
Yeah, so silly. Like, I'm like not doing it anymore. Yeah.
But yeah, so Yesi is just extremely talented in so many different ways. Yeah. So.
Oh, and I love business.
Yeah, I think
numbers,
that's the core of your
all
thing.
Of that. Yeah. I'm really good at that.
She really is. Yeah. That's why I have her here in my business, because Yesi has.
I'll start a business with you.
Yeah, she really would.
We already did.
Yeah. I'm not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. I'm not gonna advertise that we pay people.
Yeah. They'll hire us, that's why.
Yeah, they will. Okay. So, thank you for sharing that with us. Yes. Next, so now we're gonna dive into the heart of the matter. And so I know that you've opened up a lot about what it was like growing up with parents that were divorced, and how that has affected you. And now it's things that are springing up again, right? Which is crazy because, as you even mentioned in the interview that just aired on Thursday, that you've lived half of your life, right? Almost half of your life, having grown up with parents that have been divorced and all that. So by now, you would think that it's something that you have like a pretty good hold on or whatever, but everybody knows that life has a way of throwing curveballs at us, right? Especially when you enter different phases of life. And so in Shekinah's interview, she mentioned that something that A-Rob said, and that impacted me a lot. It was A-Rob pretty much was telling her, like, the fact that it was something that to be glad about was that there was no kids involved in their separation, and her ex-husband. And so I'm curious, like, how, because you were like, your parents did have kids, and so do you remember like the first time that you felt the weight of their divorce?
Instantly. I mean, as we were going through it, honestly, there's been a lot of heartache in it. And I can also recall, like, I would go to like family members or family friends, and I'm like crying because I just, it's just heartbreaking. And at least they would understand because they both know both of my parents, and they've been able to see my sister and I go through it. And it's just heartbreaking because you go through it and you think that other people might understand you, but no one understands you, So you feel sometimes lonely, especially like at school. I was the only one at the time that had separated parents.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah. And I thought it was so weird. Well, actually, people treated me like if I was a weirdo because I had separated parents. And I thought it was so weird once I grew up that it's just a weird thing and it's not normal to have your parents still together.
Yeah.
Like when my sister and I were talking with Andre when he came to our apartment, right? When he was helping us like move. Yeah. When we found out his parents were still together, we were like, really?
Yeah.
That's weird. And I think I even told you, like, your parents are still together? Like, that's crazy. Like, honestly, it's not normal anymore, which is sad.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is crazy. I remember you are actually one of the people that made me appreciate that, because I think I always took that for granted, right? And my parents did go through like some major nonsense, but when you said that, I was like, oh wow. And so it really made me appreciate that, right? And so okay, so you're saying that to me that's crazy, right? Because now we see separation, it's so common nowadays, to be quite honest. And so when you were a kid and all that, and how did you cope with it? Like, how did you find a way to deal with their separation during that time?
It was really hard because on weekends we would switch houses every Friday. So this Friday I would live out a suitcase and I would go to my dad's and he would pick us up and we would have like a good old time at dad's house. And then next Friday we would go to my mom's and have a good old time at my mom's house. So you wouldn't have structure. So you would try to, I think subconsciously you would try to find structure some way or another.
Yeah.
But it was never, they were never on the same page because they never talked.
Yeah.
And so you knew what ways to manipulate one house and the other house. You knew what house you're going to hang out with your friends doing this. The other one, you're like, okay, we're going to, try to sneak out. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
And by that time, I had my own car. So then, you would go distract yourself with your friends doing nonsense, crazy stuff. And I would take my sister for the ride all the time. And she was obviously the only person that knew what we were going through together. And so at least I'm thankful I still to this day have her, and we can still talk about these things because like Shekinah mentioned, a lot of situations that we go through, you start peeling things off and like it's like an onion, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like even to this day, we still have conversations about how it affects us.
Yeah.
And we're still learning how to cope with it. Even if we went to therapy, we did go to therapy for many years, and it's like crazy because even during the struggles and everything, we tried to cope with it with therapy, and therapy only helps so much.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember one time, because I didn't know how to deal with my emotions, and I think for me it affected me, at least at the time, more than my sister, only because I was older. So I got to see a lot more and understand a lot more. And when I went to therapy, I would have my, interactions, and they would even tell me like, oh, you're so mature. You're so grown up for your age. And I had no other option, right? And you would talk to police officers because during the divorce, there was police involved. And when they would like see me stand outside, I'm like, my parents are so mature. And like, I would have a conversation with them, and they're like, this is really sad because you're mature. You're mature for your age, and you shouldn't be. You're still a teenage kid, and you're talking like you're an adult, and they're the teenagers. Yeah. And so I think it played a lot in my head, and it made me grow up a lot faster than I should have in some areas. Yes. Because in some areas, I think I'm still silly, and I could definitely mature in,
I love that you said that because, you're living this experience, right? And one thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as I've grown older is like, I start putting myself in, and you and I have had this conversation now that you have Zariah, where it's just like, wow, like it really made me think of my parents, like what must have they been going through when they were like raising me and all these things. And so, going back even to what we talked about in the last episode, where it's like understanding the frailty of the human nature, right? And so to understand also that even though you had some insight into what was going on with your parents, like you still didn't know the fullness of it. And so that's so crazy because we have a whole bunch of humans trying to figure out a situation that they're put in for the first time. And so it must be so difficult though for you and your sister to deal with this because it wasn't your choice.
It wasn't. And that's something that at least for myself, I can speak for myself. I always question God, why me? Yeah. Why am I going through this? I seriously thought I had like the best childhood, and I can honestly say I did. Yeah. And something that blew my mind when they were getting divorced was, how can these people get a divorce if I know that they love each other so much? Yeah. And so it was heartbreaking to see them go through it, because when I was younger, I would always question them. How did you guys meet? I was born, but you guys were born together. Like, I never understood that they met each other and that they got married and fell in love. Like, I never understood that. I thought they were just like born together.
Yeah. But they just came together.
Yeah, they just came. Like, it never in my head, like, associated with them, like, actually being little kids and then growing up. Like, I just always thought they were adults for their whole life. And they were born together,
What do you mean they were?
Each other. Yeah, they were made for each other. And so for me to see them get a divorce, it was heartbreaking, because I'm like, how can these people like love each other and go through that? Yeah. And it affects you in your future relationships too. And I know during therapy, we had to not only have therapy because it was court ordered, but I know that my dad really wanted us to go to therapy, which I appreciate he did that, because he would go with us. And that's awesome. Yeah. And I remember one time in therapy, it was like a one-on-one, and me and my therapist, she was really great. I wish I still had her number, but my insurance no longer covered her, so who knows where she's at.
Bye, Becky.
Bye. But I remember she sat with me and she asked me a few questions, and I don't even recall what they were, but I just would tell her like my feelings, or what I would go through at school, how you would feel lonely, how your parents would talk. Like, again, like you mentioned earlier, you have people who are having to deal with their emotions, who never have dealt with this before. Like both of their parents never had divorce.
Yeah.
They weren't around divorce like that. So for them to like have a divorce, I feel like it was very hard on them.
Absolutely, yeah.
They were so young too. And I just did the math, I think 3 weeks ago with my husband. And I said, they were your age when they got divorced.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And it broke my heart because I'm like, I see you, and I would never like imagine my husband at that age. Yeah. Like, who knows, like, the emotions.
Yeah, that must be tough.
So it broke my heart. Like, I was in tears, and I was like, I can't believe they were so young.
Yeah, and your parents are gun-ho over you and Natalie.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're crazy for you guys. Like they show up in the best way they know how to show up.
Yes, and I appreciate that for them and that in them, and knowing that they had to go through a divorce like so young, had to go through their emotions. Like they didn't probably know who to turn to that can help them out. They handled it at least the best way that they knew how. Yeah. As a teenager, I didn't understand that, and I didn't agree with the ways that they handle situations all the time.
Right.
But now as like an adult, I'm like, I understand. Yeah. I just wish somebody was there for me. Yes. To like protect me and tell me like they're still kids themselves. Right. I didn't understand that. Right. But the therapist, I remember she was asking me questions, and she said, Yesenia, I don't want to scare you. And I think we need to deal with this a lot, because when you grow up, you're not going to trust people easily. And you're going to have a really hard time finding somebody that you want to marry. And when she said that, I was like, okay, I don't agree with that. I don't understand why she's saying that.
Yeah, that's weird.
But I remember that she got that from the questions, and it really is true. Like throughout my relationships, throughout even friendships, relationships with people, even my parents, like it's really hard for me to trust people. At least now that God, is in my life, it's a lot easier. But before then, it's like you throw up all the walls, and you're like, break it down if you want it. Yeah. If you want me, if you want my friendship, if you want my love, if you want anything to do with me, you're gonna have to fight through hell. Right. Because I'm putting those walls up so high.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, in one way, right? It's valid, because the people that you trusted the most ended up like kind of, and not intentionally, right? It's not like they woke up one day and were like, oh, we're going to do this to
our children. It was never that way.
Yeah, it was never that. Like, I'm sure it came to a really tough decision. So I just want to make that clear. But still, like, when you go through that, when you had like this whole idea in your mind, like, that's crazy. And so, and to me, it's just wild the way that God orchestrates stories. Just like the fact, because I picked you guys randomly, the way that I was going to order your interviews. But just to see the way that it's progressing, I'm just like, Lord Jesus, thank God I have an ounce of wisdom in my life. Okay, so that's really profound. And so you had the trust issues and all of these things, right? So you just mentioned that you wish during that time that you would have had somebody to like advocate for you and fight for you, right? One, I just want to say I had never pieced it together. Like, even though the therapy was obviously something that we wish wasn't necessary, right, for any reason, but I think it really, just seeing you express yourself and hearing you express yourself, I think like you're somebody that really knows how to, for the most part, assess like your emotions and are able to discern what's going on in others. So I think that for sure was at least a huge payoff in that. But so you were mentioning that you wish somebody was there fighting for you and all these things. So do you think that helped you like become an advocate for yourself and for others?
Definitely. Yeah. When you're a teenager and you're going through this, you have to remember, like, you're a teenager. You're going not only through peer pressure at school, you're going through hormones, boys, at least because I'm a girl, right? So you're going through boys, drama. Like, you're not only having that teenage experience, but you're also adding like that family drama at home. Yes. So where you were supposed to come home and have that safe space, like now it's unbalanced, and you're trying to find a way. And then your parents are trying to find a way too. They're still doing their things of being responsible for you and loving you and making sure that they know that you're there, but they're also trying to provide. Yes. Like my mom now, they were both single parents. So I had to see them on a completely different like take. Yes. I got to see my mom as a single mom and work hard to provide for us, and I saw my dad do the same, and the way that they coped, very different. And I remember I think they mentioned something about my attitude in court, because my attitude was already like, because obviously I'm doing my emotions, and again, like those walls, like I'm gonna put up these walls and I don't care,
right?
You know, so I'm gonna say what I want to say. I'm gonna do what I want to do, and my goal was like, if I make my parents cry, that's on them.
Yeah,
like they caused this, and that's not healthy. But
yeah,
I was just so angry. Yeah. I was so angry, and I didn't know what to go through and how to deal with it. So I remember that I had to go to court mandated classes. Behavioral classes. Court behavioral classes.
That's so crazy, because you used to work in that. Like that was your
latest job. I did so I did it for the adults. I worked teaching the adults. I never did it for the kids. Okay. But I had to go in there with the kids, and these are kids that are like tagging walls, doing all these things, and I'm making friends with them, and you have to like do all these activities, and then they give you homework to go do with your parents. And me and my sister, like, I don't know what we're doing in here, right? But we liked it, we enjoyed it, and it felt like, my favorite movie, Freedom Riders. Like it felt like all the mischiefs, Yeah. And I would always think like, I don't know why I'm in here, but fine, like let's just make the best out of it. And I remember I had a certificate to show that I did behavioral classes, and because again, my attitude was way out there. Yeah. And now when I see kids and I see them react a certain way, I instantly know. Yeah. Something's up with their parents.
Yeah, which is awesome, because you serve in our Young Disciples ministry.
I do.
And so again, like God, the way that God tells stories is so amazing, because now you're able to take something that was such a trying time in your life. Now you're able to use that to be able to like pour into the next generation, right? Which they themselves are facing, like it just keeps getting worse in some ways, right? And so to be able to have somebody that can identify with the pain that they're going through, like, it's profound. So that's what I love about Jesus, the fact that he doesn't waste any experience, right?
Yeah. And I think being there, it breaks my heart, because again, you see it and it's normalized in schools and everything, about blended families. And I know all about blended families. Like I have now step siblings, right? And I have a half, my little sister, I don't call her half sibling, right, but I do have one. And it's also a difficult dynamic to go through, and it's very different, and people don't always understand it. And so having to explain it to people who never gone through that, like sometimes they look down upon you. And even teenagers do that to other teenagers, and you kind of like have to be there, and you're like, no, like you kind of like mesh it together, and you're just trying to make sure that you don't have like any bullying going on. Right. Not saying that they bully, but like you don't want them to like push buttons, because you're kind of protective over the kid that's having to deal with that, the emotions. Like I mentioned earlier, you're going through peer pressure and then instability sometimes here, or a different dynamic. Right. You don't want to like add peer pressure to them. You don't want to do any of that. You want to make sure, like for myself, like I wish someone was there to protect me and tell me like, it's okay, you're gonna get through this, and I've gone through it, and you can go through it too. I never was around someone that has gone through it and can say like, Jesus brought me through it. Right. Never. And I wish someone can speak that to me. Right. So that's why I'm so thankful to be with the Young Disciples. But not only that, like to be around other kids, or even to be around parents who have kids that go through that, because I can tell them like, it's really difficult for your kids too. Yeah. Like you might go through all your emotions and fight for your kids, but also know like that's your child's other parent. Yeah. And so regardless of what you think of the other person, that's also a part of them. Yeah. And people forget.
Yeah, and that's so tough, because now considering that, it's like this is their entire worldview. Like this is the child's makeup, right? And so they're just so limited. And I feel like sometimes I've grown up with parents that are like, dude, like just get over it type of thing, because they expect that from their children. But it's like the children, they don't have the same understanding. They don't have the same perspective that others have. You know what I mean? Like again, me, as I'm barely turning, well, not I'm now at 32 years old.
Girl, you've been 32.
I've been grown. Start to crying. Being 32 years old, like until now, am I able to look back and just really see, the like that we're all really just trying to get it together, right? Yeah. We're all just trying to do our best for the most part, right? Because there's some knuckleheads out there. Okay, so super good. I love it. And next question that I would like to ask you is, so you've gone through all of this, right? And we were dating, like leading up to Andre. How was that like dating experience for you? Like being in relationships or anything
in the world, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're constantly looking for a distraction. I put myself in very dangerous situations, drinking wise, partying wise, not smart at all.
Yeah.
And I would always keep my life private from my family, always, even with the men I dated. Like I would always tell them I'm gonna go on a date, and I wouldn't tell them at all where it was because I already know. I'm like, my dad's gonna end up showing up and stalking or something, and just being like, "What's up, fool?" Like, like saying something to the guys and scaring them. Like, knowing my dad, that's exactly what he would do.
Just to mess with you, I'm sure.
Just to mess with me, yes.
Or your uncles?
My uncles, they would probably mess with me. So I just kept it low key, and I would talk to guys, but I was never like boyfriend girlfriend. And the reason why is because I never wanted to have that title with somebody, because I feel like once you do, you're very vulnerable. And if they were to like leave you, cheat on you, like it would break your walls, right? So I always had my guard up, always. And if somebody wanted to make it to boyfriend, like they would have had to like break all these walls to get in, And I made sure that they didn't.
That's really so. Denise and I were actually just talking about that, or I think it was on Monday, but how crazy that is, right? Because you're just sending me down a little bunny trail here, so bear with me a little bit.
Okay.
But you're talking about how being out in the world and stuff, like you had all these walls and you didn't want to have that title. And I think that is such the culture that we're in right now, right? Like, like women have been lied to and saying that when we keep that kind of control, where we keep that kind of like dynamic in relationships, then we're considered like these like boss babes or like these baddies or whatever. When in reality, like it ends up hurting us even more, right? Like, for me, like I've mentioned before, like music is such a huge culture influence.
Yeah.
Right. And so I love that you're touching on that, because I think women need to like take that pill, like truth pill right away, and be like, hey, like if you're feeling like, oh, I'm never gonna have a man have like let a man have power over me, it's not because it's not coming from a healed stance, it's coming from a super broken stance, right?
Yeah.
So like how long did that last for? Like, and how were you able to break that with Dre? Like,
oh, and I'm so thankful I did have those walls broken, like up there actually, because all these guys were trash. You're hearing this, I'm sorry. But us talking, everything, trash relationship.
All of them.
Honestly.
I mean, the snapback and tattoos guy.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was the worst. But a lot of these guys, they were self-centered. They were, like supposedly my type and everything. But they really had to fight for these walls, and some of them didn't. Like they were like, nah, it's not worth it. But then they would call me back, like when they were like want to, right? And I'm like, oh, like blocked. And the way I cut them off, some of them, honestly, I would just like, okay, I'm not interested in them, block, like delete. I don't even talk to them. I didn't even tell them like I'm not talking to you anymore. Still in a relationship with somebody right now. What the heck? You've been married for 10 years. But I just didn't. Yeah. And the reason why is because I didn't care enough to do it. Yeah. And again, it's just coming back from that brokenness of I'm not going to let them in anyway. Yeah. So here we go. And I did that with friends too, like girlfriends. Like in high school, I would hang out with an ex-best friend, okay? And I just cut cold turkey because of drama. And I'm just like, I'm not even going to touch base and delete it off of social media and everything.
Oh my gosh. No more MySpace top 8.
Yeah. Removed.
Yeah.
But I think that was a really hard thing. But with Andre, it was different. It was when I first seen him, I'm like, I was not only already like learning about Jesus at the time and God and reading the Bible for myself, but when I saw him, I again, the first time I was like, that guy's like that creepy guy from Twitter. And then the second time I saw him, I'm like, oh wait, it wasn't, my bad. He's so okay. I touched my mic. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But the second time I saw him, I'm like, okay, he is so cute. I need to know more about him. And he was actually talking to my sister, and he worked in the same department.
Not talking, just like having conversation.
Yes, having conversation. And he was, just trying to get to know her, but also like kind of teach her the ropes of the department. And for some reason, okay, he says he didn't like me, but why would he ask if I like to go to the movies?
I'm saying.
Why would he ask if I love Jesus? Why would he ask if
he was screening you?
He was.
Come on,
through
man.
my sister.
Come on,
and she would come to our house, and she would say, he asked about you, and I was like, really? What did he ask? Did you tell him I love Jesus? Did you tell him?
I remember you telling me that. It's funny.
Because he asked if I was Catholic or Christian, and I was in that stance of I'm trying to figure it out myself. I'm reading the Bible. I grew up Catholic. I don't know what I am anymore. Yeah. And she's like, I told him you grew up Catholic. Wrong answer. Wrong answer. I'm figuring myself out right now. I'm reading the Bible. Throw that in the combo tomorrow, Yeah. But it was really cool. It was really cool to see like how God opened doors that way. And now, of course, we were friends first. Yeah. But it was very different at first, like trying to get to know them. I did work at Sephora, and some of the girls would be like, just just be careful. And I'm like, why? And I was like, he's just my friend. And they're like, well, just, just stay clear from people and from at work in general. And I'm like, yes, it's weird, obviously, but I was very thankful that we got to not only hang out as friends, but hang out with our young adults at the church. Like, that was really fun. And
and just to clarify a little bit, because we've said on the podcast, guys and girls can't just be friends.
Yes.
So explain that.
Okay, so I remember I wasn't coming to church or anything, and I would go out to the bars with my friends, and he would like message me, right? And
to skating bars.
Okay, but I didn't go to a church or anything.
You were still finding. You were out getting a testimony.
I was getting my testimony, and I remember he would message me, and I would get all excited. And my friends were like, "Why are you getting all giggly?" and they're like, "Do you like him?" And I kept playing it off like,
"No, I hate him.
No, I don't. He's just messaging me like." But you're all messaging and you're getting all giggly and like you're constantly on your phone. Yeah. And he didn't flirt with me. None of that, right? And I would always say, when you're texting a guy, usually they flirt with you within like the first week. Yeah, it always like never fails. Somehow. So I'm like, what is going on with this guy? Like, what? He's seeing somebody else. Like, he has a girlfrione probably. That's the only explanation. And so, so I'm like, okay,
He's not broken.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna, do anything. I'm not gonna open like any doors. Like, it's really fun to get to know somebody on that level. And I think a lot of it came because I think he was coming to the church too, and he wanted to make sure like people, like I myself found Jesus first. And I think he had combos with you about this. Yeah.
Oh, great combos. And Lily was here during that time too. Yes. So she was like a huge part of that as well. Okay, so I just needed to make sure that we clarified that for our followers, just because I know that we've had conversations about that, right? And so clearly you have to be friends with somebody to determine whether you want to pursue a relationship or not. But there is that point, right, where there has to be a decision made where it's like, okay, like one of us has got feelings here, or both of us, hopefully both. So there has to be a decision, like, are we going to do this or are we not, right? So don't come at us. And if you do, our email will not be on the bottom. Okay, so now that, as you mentioned in the podcast, once again, is now you're experiencing a lot of these things coming up again, right? Some of the things that you thought you were hoping maybe that you would never have to deal with again. And so how do you navigate that as a married woman, right? Because as a single woman, you were able to put up these walls and all these things until you found Jesus, until Andre came into the picture.
Even through that, though, because Andre did have to break down walls. And during our courtship, it was a big thing. Like, I would always shut down. And like I used to say, I used to cut people off cold turkey, right? Mm-hmm. Like with him, I would just give the silent treatment.
Really?
Yeah. And I remember P-Len, she was like, Yesenia, that's not healthy. And I was like, but it works. That's what works for me. Yeah. Because I'm so like angry and I didn't know how to handle my emotions. So when I stay silent, I can just think about it.
Yeah.
And I need to have that moment. But she's like, at least communicate that you need that cool off moment.
Oh, I see.
Right. And then I would have these walls and it would be like, okay, Andre wants to pursue me. Well, I'm gonna put this wall up. See if you can take it down, you know, just to see if like you're worth it. And you would do it subconsciously. Like I didn't do it like on purpose. Right. Like, okay, here goes another one. It would just be a reaction, and that I would just say, okay, this is another part of me. Are you okay with it? This is another part of me. Are you okay with it? And it was like, this person's gonna see the ugly and everything about you, and they have to be okay with it and have to fight through it. Yeah. So it wasn't easy even for him, and I think even in our marriage, it still was there.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because in a way you were giving him reasons to like not pursue you, right? Which is crazy.
Self-sabotaging, because I totally wanted to be with him.
Yeah, it's so weird. Yeah. Like that economy is so weird, and I think it could be both men and women that do that, honestly. And I want to use this as a right now, just interject and just be like, for any single person that's out there, it's like when even Denise mentioned it in the last podcast that just released on Thursday, where it's like you are worthy of somebody to do that, to pursue that for you, right? And to pursue you for who you are, the baggage and everything. And I think a lot of people, what they tend to do is they look at what's wrong with them, and then they hyper focus on that, and they're like, well, nobody's ever going to be able to like take that or want to love that. Yeah. And just to see and hear your story, because I know that I can see it in one lens and I can apply that to my life or somebody else's life, but when I hear how it affects everybody, goes through that same battle, it's just, it pops up different, because we live in such a broken state, and to believe that somebody can love you for all your crap, like, that's scary.
And that they won't leave you because you've seen again, yes, like for myself, you've seen a fairy tale, like mom and dad, yeah, like raise you, and then you're like, okay, is this person gonna leave me? Because I don't want to go through that. Right. Like my whole goal is I don't want to get a divorce, so like you're either with me through the battles, the good times and the ugly times, or not.
Are you coming up missing?
Yeah, for sure. So it was very difficult, especially because he doesn't have a background of anybody in his family being divorced. Yeah. So for him, he's like, why are you like this?
It's really funny to hear your guys' dynamics sometimes. Yeah. Okay, so you've shared the powerful story about the courting process with Dre and what that looks like. So with everything, and now I'm speaking like, because we can do single people as a whole, but I think it'd be fair to talk to somebody that's been through trauma that's similar to that. Like, what kind of advice would you give to somebody that's grown up in a household that had divorce, or maybe their parents were never even together, like they never got to experience that? How would you talk to them about the process of courting and encourage them in that?
Well, courting is very difficult, extremely difficult. I will say that even if you have divorced parents or not, like separated parents or not, like regardless of your family dynamic, just courting in general is not for the weak at all. Because there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of boundaries, and the world does not make it easy whatsoever for that. You just want to go to the movies. Oh yeah, I'll pick you up. Oh, that means we're in the car alone together. Yeah. Things can happen, kind of sucks, right? Yeah. So just making sure that you know that ahead of time. Having divorced parents or separated parents or parents who were never even together, your dynamic is very different than when somebody who does have them. Yeah. Whether we want to admit it or not, it is. And the way that we perceive things, we're like, oh, this is my normal. To them, it's not their normal. Yeah. So an instance for myself, having like step siblings and everything, for my husband, it wasn't like the easiest to understand. Mm-hmm. And then once he came into it, he now understands it. He understands the dynamic. He's friends with everybody. It's mm-hmm. great. But if he wasn't open to that, I don't know how my relationship would be now. Yeah. If he wasn't open to having to make that, it's not a sacrifice, but having to make that effort to kind of understand the dynamic, because again, it comes with me, mm-hmm. right? So if you're going to be courting somebody, definitely bring them around your family, just so they can kind of understand it, and if they're okay with it, because once you like, let's say you don't have them around your family at all. Once you get married and you're like, oh, let's go to like a party, like a family party or a carne asada or like a get together. Now you're going to kind of see them and you interact with your family a different way. Yeah. You should have done that courting. Yeah. So you can see that dynamic first.
Yeah, because they already knew what they were getting themselves into.
Yeah. And now they're not going to understand things, and they'll give you a hard time, and maybe you might feel like you should have known this beforehand. Like, you don't accept this. This is part of me, and it affects your worthiness. So yeah, it's just a definitely something to think about. Also, Pilan did mention that to make sure that when you're courting, bring them around your family, because something might tick them off that their family did and you would have never seen. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Really? Because you find out so much about somebody when they're around their family. Like, for myself, I got to see him hang out with his siblings, his parents, and like, my husband thinks a lot of the things he thinks a lot of things are funny, so he thinks like them, like talking about like food and picking out food, like he'll just be on the side dying of laughter if they're like not in an argument but like in a tiff of something. Yeah. He's like dying of laughter. So now it makes sense, like when there's sometimes serious combos that I'm trying to have, he thinks it's funny. Oh, and I'm like, oh, it makes sense.
Makes sense. That's where that wiring came from.
Yes. Or vice versa. Like, my family loves to get under my skin sometimes, especially my dad and my uncles. Like, they'll say things on purpose.
It's a love language.
Yes, if they know it's going to get me mad. Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, stop. And Andre calls it the spicy Latina, He's like, oh, spicy Latina coming out, But he knew that ahead of time, but it was amplified, obviously, once we came around them more.
Yeah. So those family can get you like nobody else can.
Yes.
Dude.
Yes.
Lord have mercy.
Especially siblings.
Oh.
Yes.
Forget it.
Yeah.
My sister only has to look at me and I'm already upset. I'm already like crying.
Yeah, but I would definitely say family, getting to know each other on family, getting to know somebody and making sure that you're aware if you're bringing your walls up or not. Yeah. Being accountable to somebody that has your heart in it and knows exactly what you've been through. Because if they don't know what you've been through, that they're not going to understand why you are the way that you are. So just giving somebody like a synopsis might not even help. It's more of them knowing exactly your struggle. So if they helped you through that area, then they can help you with courting too, I would say.
And that's so tough, I think, because even in the courting process, like, I think the moment that you start allowing somebody to have influence over those areas, it's even more vulnerable. Oh, yeah. Right? Because now you're allowing them to, like, the word that I like to use or phrase is cross-pollinate. So now your lives are really starting to, like, merge together. And so it's like, okay, now this is becoming messy because now you're literally becoming a part of my life. Yeah. Like, it's not just something that I do on the side, like with that. That sounds terrible, but you get
this relationship is just on my side.
Yeah, it's like I clock in and out and that's it. But no, like when you start, you're getting comfortable now,
I'm getting comfortable. I want to hear about this.
We're just starting. I can't. All right, we're moving on. Okay,
so you guys know, I just moved myself to face her.
To face me. She got her legs. I feel like I'm in a therapy session now. I just want to give her both mics. Okay, so.
But it's true. You do become more vulnerable with somebody, especially because not only are you talking about them with your like boundaries, but you also have to admit when you cross those boundaries, because it's hard, when you're courting. So when you do cross those boundaries, you're out there. You're putting yourself out there.
If you want to do it the healthy way.
Yes, if you want to do it the healthy way, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so did you give your advice? Did you give your advice? You did, huh? Oh yeah, bringing them around the family, and we had a whole dialogue.
Yeah, bringing them around their family, making sure that they're held accountable. Also making sure that you're aware of your walls up. Make sure you deal with as much stuff that you have as possible, because they're gonna have to understand it. Another thing, to make sure that you understand your finances and everything too.
That's scary.
That's a scary part. Yeah. Yeah. But sure. you might find that stuff out from your family and things, this person, some might say like, that person owes me $20. Yeah. They've never paid me $20. I don't know. Those are just like silly things, but also just making sure that this person doesn't have like a gambling problem or anything like that. just to make sure that they know about their finances. Like for myself, I was you know me, I was a free spender. Anytime I got money,
Yesi would take me out on dates.
Yes.
Nobody's treated me as good as Yesi.
And then when I stopped working, right?
Oh, terrible.
Yes, terrible times. Yeah. But I would get paid. Let's get sushi. Let's go get food. Let's go. Let's go drive around. Yes.
Oh my gosh, my favorite.
We would go buy makeup, right?
Oh my goodness.
So knowing that those spending habits, thankfully he was my friend. He was around us when we struggled with the Apple Pay, all of that. He knew about those things. When I would lose my purse, I wouldn't have my purse, remember? And he would have to pay for it. So he knew all of those things coming forward.
Yeah.
Another thing that I will extremely highlight and recommend, if you're going to be courting, bring them around your friends. Not just your family, but your friends. And I would say your friends because you get to know another level of them. Like, remember that guy that you brought around?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Saved me a lot.
Yeah.
Saved me a lot of heartache. We still use his name as a proverb.
See? Yeah. But I know that you get to realize that, okay, the person that I'm courting, this is how they interact with other people. You want to, like for myself, does he flirt with other girls when I'm around? Is he always on his phone? Is he hiding things? Like just things that your friends would catch. Does he put respect on my name? Does he put some respect on it? But does he serve people around you?
Yeah, that's good.
Right? Does he check in on you, make sure you're okay while you're hanging out with all your friends? Like, hey, are you thirsty or anything? I can go get you something. Like when you're in a combo with your friends. Those are all things to keep an eye out for. Another part is like, are they fun? Like if they're around your friends, are they Debbie Downers or are they fun? Oh my gosh, yes. Right? Because your friends don't want to be around boring people. No. And if you're going to be the one bringing that boring person, you're most likely not going to be invited to those hangouts, right?
Say goodbye.
Yeah. So whoever you are with has to be like a part of you and represent you well. So just think of that. And then another thing is when you're going out and you're having fun with your friends, it's really a safe space for you to hang out and do things. Like when we went to Beverly Hills, remember we were riding the bird scooters? Oh my God, yeah. And remember I was like driving it and I wanted to make sure I looked all cool.
Oh yeah.
And I fell.
Oh yes.
And I turned around real quick to make sure he didn't look at me. And you were dying of laughter because you were behind me the whole time.
Oh my God.
But those are
forgotten about that specific one.
It was your birthday, you remember?
I have it in my mind right now. That was great.
But those are instances that, like, thankfully he didn't realize that happened to me, remember? But those are instances that would really matter because the way that they would react and everything, your friends would tell you things like, hey, he's totally a red flag or not.
Right.
You know?
No, absolutely. I love it. I love all these tips. Okay. So another question that came up was, so you lived on your own for how long?
I think like 8 years since I was 21. Years?
No.
When did I get married? 20.
You didn't. You lived in the how long?
I was 21 when I got the apartment.
And then how old? 8 years?
I think so. Yeah.
I think that's crazy. For some reason, I thought it was like 2 or 3 years.
No,
dude, my sense of time is excellent. Obviously. Okay, so I'm tripping out right now. I feel like a whole new world has opened up for me for some reason. Okay, so you lived by yourself for 8 years. That's enough to learn habits, right? That's enough to learn how you want to do things.
Yeah.
So how was the transition from being independent to moving in with Dre, who came straight, like his transition was his parents' house and now to you? So there was an adjustment made for both of you, right? Yeah. How was that?
So it was noticeable right away. I think just even going to the grocery store the first time when, I'm already like, okay, we have to go get this. Our pantry's empty. We need this. And he was like, why do we need this? Mm-hmm. Because we don't have salt, And those are things that he's probably never had to buy or something. Mm-hmm. So, but he really enjoyed those moments. Like, and I was kind of proud of him to go out there on his own and like live life. Mm-hmm. And it sounds so cheesy.
Bye, little birdie.
Bye, little birdie. Bye. But it's just great to see him because he was just so proud of himself. He's like, man, like I got a house, like I got these things, and I'm like, yes, you do.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you do. You got a wife and everything. But it was also really hard for me because I not only had like my own setup. I had all my stuff. Like I came from a kitchen, so I brought all my kitchen stuff.
Came from a kitchen.
Sorry, I came from having a kitchen, from having all this furniture. And he's like, "What's all this stuff? What is it for?" And my husband
for
gets
life.
I was like, "This is so you can cook. What are you talking about?
That meal you're eating?"
Yeah,
so funny.
Yeah, so it was very difficult for us, especially because I had things organized a certain way, and if you remember back to a few podcasts ago, he didn't move until after.
Oh, yeah.
So I moved in there first, and like a couple months after we got married, he moved in.
Yeah.
So that's when he started moving things around, and I was already comfortable.
Oh, geez.
And so I'm like, why did you move the spices?
That'll preach.
Yes. Why did you move this? Because I need to make room for my stuff. We don't need your stuff. Yeah, we don't need your stuff.
When did you buy this?
Yeah. Or just how he like organizes. Thank God we had double sink in our bathroom, but the way he organizes his stuff, and then he wanted to include it into like my makeup drawer stuff.
No.
Like he moved some of my stuff, and me, like don't touch my makeup, don't touch my skincare. Yeah. It's very difficult, very different.
Yeah.
But I mean, now you can't picture life without them, right? Or your dynamic. You know each other. You know exactly how you leave stuff. Like he's always known that my car has been dirty. You know that, right? Yeah. He knows that. So like even to this day, he like cleans my stuff. Like like if I go get coffee, I just leave it in the like after it's empty. I still leave it there in the cup holder, and he like every day like
just goes in and gets
he just makes sure that my car is like clean, so he'll like throw it out for me. So I think we're kind of like learning. I mean.
Which is fun, right? It gets fun. I remember, I think even, I don't know if he said it in the podcast or it was just in dialogue that he and I were having, but he was like, yeah, Yesi and I, he's like, it's cool because now Yesi and I are getting to the point where I can like just tell what she's thinking. Or I think I was at your house. And so then, so it's cool, right?
We joke about it because it's 3 years in the making. So, I mean, 3 years to some people is like, you guys are newlyweds still, right?
Yeah.
But 3 years is a huge victory, especially, I mean, for myself coming from my family. I think I'm like, that's a huge badge. Yeah. And the way that you see the dialect, like before we would like fight for like the silly stuff, right? Yeah. But now it's like, I know you're going to think this way, so I'm already doing this.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure I'm about your heart and you're about my heart. Yeah.
Which is awesome. And I think that just speaks to like, just being transparent as much as you can from it's better for somebody to reject you for being real, for being who you are and everything, because that you knew that, because at some point the facade or whatever, like it's gonna die out, right? And so then that's even gonna be scarier, and that's gonna be heartbreaking. It can potentially be heartbreaking and add a layer of struggle that you didn't really need. And so I love it, right? To be able to pour yourself out and show somebody like, hey, this is what it is.
Yeah.
And because now you know that the connection is genuine, right? And you don't have to fake the funk, so to speak.
But going back to, completely agree, but going back to what you were telling me about being like independent and everything, it was very difficult. And to be able to submit to a husband, I did want to make sure I touched upon that. It's very difficult because you're like, I'm grown.
Yeah.
I paid my dues, like I've done stuff, like
especially with you, like you were in a whole career.
Yes.
Like you were managing a makeup store. I don't know if you want to say it, so I'm just gonna say it as that.
Yeah.
You're managing a makeup store. Like you were moving. Like people were like, you were on the road to like corporate.
I was.
You know what I mean?
I was
like,
very close.
Very close. And so to give that up.
Yeah.
For some, and I mean, look at where Andre's now. Like that's amazing. But at that time, like you were putting your trust in somebody that was kind of barely starting out. Yeah. Right. And so that's intense.
Yeah. He called me sugar mama. Funny guy. But it was very difficult because you were independent. You listened to yourself. You didn't have to obey anybody else, and now you're living with somebody, and it got to the point where it's like, okay, I love you so much, but when are you going to go home? Like, because you're not used to them living there with you. I don't know, it's just weird.
Yeah.
Because obviously you have all these boundaries, so it's just crazy to think like, okay, we're married.
Yeah.
And he would always say that, why do you think that? You're so weird. And I tell him, it's because I was by myself for a while, I didn't have somebody.
You had to fend for yourself.
Yeah. For a long time, yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure that's difficult.
Yeah.
So difficult.
Yeah, and it would cause a lot of, at least for myself, a lot of arguments, because it would be like, I could do it myself. I could do it myself. Just watch me. I'll do it myself. And he's like, whoa. I want to help you.
Yeah.
Like, can I serve you? Can I do this for you?
I'd like to see you do it.
That's what I've been saying. Yeah. But I'm like, no, I could do it myself. And then I'm like, okay, it feels great to be able to just let go.
Yeah.
Be your feminine self. Yeah. Okay, you could do that for me. Like, it takes a while, but.
Right. But it's achievable, ladies.
It's achievable, yeah.
You too can become. Okay, so there definitely was a lot of learning, right? Still, and I'm sure there still is.
A lot, yes.
So hopefully, single people, if you're listening to this, just know that it never ends.
It never ends.
I'm just kidding, but
it's a beautiful thing, though, that you're constantly getting to know your partner, which is awesome.
And that's what, I mean, with everything that you're saying, that's why it's so key. Like, I don't know how people can have relationships outside of Jesus. I really don't, because Jesus himself is, I mean, he be putting up with a lot of our stuff.
Yeah.
You know? Okay, so now you're in this beautiful marriage and both of you guys are walking through this life together. So can you share with me how, especially in the last episode, you talked about generational curses. And I don't know, have you been able to see any generational curses already started to be broken in your family that you would like to talk about, just based on the influence of your marriage?
So, at least for him and myself, I know for sure we have boundaries within our sphere, our marriage, right? Like no drinking alcohol, and the reason why, like, I don't want my children to see at least what I kind of grew up in.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it was like the worst or alcohol abuse or anything, but I just don't want that in my family at all. And so doing that, I'm hoping and I'm praying that maybe others can see that and say, like, okay, it is possible.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of people, especially when you're Christian, like, they'll test you.
Oh.
They'll test you and they'll keep asking you, and they just can't wait for you to just give in, and they'll be like, see, it's not possible.
Exactly.
But we haven't. And my husband, he jokes around and he's like, man, I'm so drunk off of water, right? And so everyone knows in my family where he's kidding, right? And they know he's having a great time without alcohol.
Yeah. And one thing that I've noticed about you guys is, like, you never do it, at least from my point of view, from this point of view, is you don't do it condescending, right? Because again, it comes back to understanding the frailty that we all have as humans. It's like we all have our crap and we all have our baggage. And so in the Bible, it talks about to not premature somebody, or even yourself prematurely, to not judge yourself. And so I think the fact that you guys still go around your family, because where a lot of other people would probably just cut communication, which I think for some people it is wise. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like there's some people definitely, especially if you're in a toxic environment and you feel like that's the best thing for you and your family, absolutely 100%. But I think it's amazing that you and him have this partnership where you know how to help each other navigate each other's families, right? Because ultimately that is what I keep talking about, reconciliation, but that is the ultimate goal.
Yeah, and I see that within, I think one of the biggest things that him and I talk about is how we ourselves are so harsh with our own family. Mm-hmm. And how when we go into opposite families, like, hey, let's not, I like for myself, like, I buffer him out with his family, right?
Yeah.
Because he can say some crazy stuff, and I'm like, hey, no, I don't think he means it that way. Yeah. I think this is what he means, Or, babe, I do think that we can come visit them more often, or whatever it is. And then on the other end, I'm like ruthless, like, no alcohol, no drinking, stop, Yeah. And for him, he'll be like making a joke about it. Yeah. And like, it's different. And I feel like it's that comical relief that I needed. Yeah. It's not so serious. Like, it's a serious boundary and a serious thing, and they know that. But it's not coming out condescending, because I'm sure I could have came out that way, Yeah. So I think that we're definitely balancing each other's family. I love that. I know that we pray for each other's family, and we pray for them to like see Jesus and meet Jesus in incredible ways. Mm-hmm. And I cry like to know that my dad was able to get married And I'm so proud of, and I even said this on his wedding day, like, I'm so proud of the decision he made of getting married, because I've constantly kept saying, like, you should get married, you should get married, you should get married, you know? And just seeing like people around us get married, and not only just get married, but they also hire the person who threw my event.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, helping hands too. She did an incredible job with my wedding. And
she's the one that did the In the Vine dating charcuterie board, our little bar area.
Yes, and the mixer, and obviously she has a way of bringing like love and such a hosting environment, and makes you feel like the love of tangible. Jesus. It's tangible. And so since my wedding, there's been a handful of weddings that have contacted her, and they're my family members that were at the wedding and said, I love what you did. And that's something that we prayed for. We said, when people come to our wedding, we want them to experience it and know that they can get this too.
That's right.
Because God is a God who redeems. And even though my family is different, and I know God is redeeming them in incredible ways. Sorry, I keep touching the mic. I know that God is doing something within Andre and I.
Yeah.
And it's to glorify God. And honestly, that's it. That's all I want.
Yeah.
But I know that he's redeeming a lot of the brokenness and the healing that I needed through my family, through restoring marriages, through providing the love of Jesus in incredible ways that hopefully they know, and maybe they haven't shared with me, but they know that God is coming through with them, you know, in different scenarios. And hopefully they could see the goodness of God in our lives, and be like, you know what, maybe this Jesus thing isn't just a game. Right. Like, it's a real thing. And at first, I'm sure they thought it was crazy that we go to church every Sunday. Oh, yeah. We try not to miss, as you know, as we are teachers also, like we teach. If there's a camping trip and it leads to us teaching, like, sorry, we teach, you know, like we can't go. Yeah. Like, I really hope that they understand, like, it's not a malicious thing that I don't want to go with them. It's just, we love Jesus so much. Like, we want other people to witness it, and we would love for them to be here too. But again, I know it's on their own timing and God's timing and everything.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, when you're really demonstrating the love of God, then you realize, like, you don't really have to convince anybody. They'll be able to see it for themselves. You know, like the Bible says, taste and see that the Lord is good. And so that's the thing about God. Like, he can make a case for himself. We just have to, like, put him in through the door, right? Like, not going to go on this tangent, but just to summarize that thought, it's like John the Baptist in the Bible. It says that he was out in the streets proclaiming that God was coming. And I remember the Holy Spirit once told me, he's like, the way that the reason why John the Baptist was in the streets was so that I can come into the homes. And so it's like, in a way, that's what we do, right? Yeah. We are the John the Baptist, like preparing the way for the Lord. And even in that, it reminds me, like, I remember the Lord being with my family, because, you know, it can be discouraging going sometimes, and you're just like, dude, like, I don't want to be around this environment. Like, this is tough. Like, especially having a kid. Like, you really have to think things through a lot. And I remember the Lord spoke to me. He's like, Melissa, you cannot allow the enemy to tell you your family's outcome. You allow me to speak over your family. That's beautiful. And that is crazy. And I love that, because you and Andre definitely do that. Like, and why, you know, and it's not me just saying this to hype Yesi up. I'm saying this is because, like, when you find somebody and you do it the right way and you honor God first, like, God is able to bring in that purpose in your relationship, not just for the two of you, but it blesses other people around you. And we can see that all throughout the Bible. I can see that throughout the testimony and a lot of couples here at the church, where it's like, when it's really like something that God has brought together, like, the community prospers. Yeah. You know, and so I love to see that in your guys' relationship, because I know it's been a blessing to a lot of us. Yeah. So before we wrap it up, is there anything else that you would like to say to the listeners? Any encouragement to our single people, or even married folks, whatever's in your heart?
I would just say, definitely hang out with the couples that, like, married couples that you would aspire to be like. Gravitate towards them, ask them questions, make it a point to be around them, because some people don't have like a place for them to pour out, because obviously with you're in a relationship, you can be busy, but when you're courting, you need that. You need the tips. You need to have other people that have gone through different walks, and if somebody's gone through a walk that you're going through, reach out to them, ask them for help, because sometimes you can't do it alone. It takes a community. Yeah. Another thing is a lot of people are scared to like bring in kids to like families or like broken families or divorced families. And for me, having my wedding was one of the most terrifying things. And since I was a little kid, like since I was 16, 15, I was like, I don't want to experience my wedding because my parents are going to have to see each other, and it's a hot mess right now. I can't imagine them again whenever I do get married. Like, that's not fair. Is my husband going to leave me because of that? Those scenarios, right? And on my wedding day, thankfully it was beautiful and everything, and my parents made a way to come gradually, like meet and stuff. But behind the scenes, I was shaking. I mean, you were there. I was on the floor shaking scared, the night beforehand, going through my emotions, going through the trauma of a little kid. And so make sure you deal with those things when you can, and just know, if you do experience those things, don't call off a wedding for your emotions. Right. Don't do any of those things. God is working in you, and he's bringing out that past trauma out of you so you can be a new person. Yeah. And I felt that, because now it's easier for me to be, okay, if you guys come together, you guys come together. Like, I'm not going to cry and shake on the floor like I was going through. And again, those are things that people go through, and they don't know they're going to go through it until they are there. Yeah. Another thing would be to make sure that when you have your kids, to give your parents grace and everything, because you will see them. They, like my parents and my husband's parents, my in-laws, like, they love on Zariah so much. And it makes me so happy, because I can see how they loved not only me, like my parents, but how Andre's parents loved on him. And they get to experience it one more time. No, that's right? Beautiful. Yeah. And they say, like my mom, Rita, my mother-in-law, they say that all the time. They say, it feels like I have my little Andre or my little Yesi back when they're with your daughter, but you get to see healing yourself. Even in them, yeah. Because you get that remembrance of, they did love me. Yeah. And despite whatever I went through and what I thought when I was 15, 16, 17, they do love me. They did love me. And they purposely didn't do those things to me, to hurt me. And they really do have a heart for me. And when you're a teenager and you're going through those emotions, you just want to fight the world. Yeah. And you forget those things. So you build up those walls, and you want to hurt those who hurt you. And so seeing that with your child, I would love to tell people, like, just be ready. Just be ready, because you're going to be a hot mess again, in a good way. Yeah. In a good way, because you're going to be like, God, you have redeemed me, and now I get to see it firsthand. And like, I get to see my dad like love on my little girl, and I know that that's the same way, like the things he's trying to teach her and talk to her. I remember those times now. And it's beautiful to see it, because again, you get to experience their love all over again, and they get to experience loving on you in a different way. So. That's amazing. That's wonderful. I didn't even think I was going to say those things. Yeah. No, but that's amazing, because you're speaking to an audience that I can never relate to. You know what I mean? Like, because I've never understood that kind of pain, but just to hear your perspective and all that, like, it's just so beautiful. I would have never seen it in that way. And so, I think it's just wonderful to be able to hear that kind of insight and to be able to hear that kind of story. And to be able, now when I hear other people going through that, it's like, no, like, it really is an identity thing. Like, it really is. It touches so many different things. And I can't even imagine having to date or open my heart up to somebody when I've experienced that sort of like, I don't even want to. It may have felt like betrayal, because like you had this whole life. Yes. You had this whole life in your betrayal. Mind. It is. Because, and then all of a sudden, like, it makes you feel crazy. It's like, now you're thinking back to everything. You're like, did I imagine everything? Yeah. Like, and now you feel crazy. And I do think divorce is like death, because they're no longer the same. It's not the same thing anymore. So it's dead. And so you do mourn it and you do miss it. And again, 15 years later, I can cry still thinking about that little girl crying. Yeah. And it's a different way. It's okay, like, that's dead and gone. Yeah. It's just you mourn right, it. You get me? So it is different. It's difficult. Yeah. Profound. Okay. Thank you, Yesi. I'm glad that we got to do this. Thank you so much. Can't wait to talk to you about this for our Thursday episode. To our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that this was a huge blessing to you. As always, send in your comments, questions, suggestions, concerns.
We'd be more than happy to address them. And thank you for tuning in for Who's in the Vine. We'll see you on Thursday for In the Vine Dating Podcast. Talk to you soon. And as always, pray for your single friends because it's hard out here.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode or we answered any of your questions, or you have a question that you would like to be discussed in future episodes, let us know in the comments or share on social media. You may also email us at inthevine.dating@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit our website for more information about our upcoming events on inthevinedating.com. And be sure to hit subscribe so you won't miss out on the amazing content and guests we have lined up for you. Shalom and God bless.